So the format tonight is an introduction about Marlow Energy Group, and then a presentation by Rena, Michael and Kyla, and then a question and answer session after that. Marlow Energy Group was established a couple of years ago, and since its establishment it's run 10 Ask the Experts talks, all on our website: heat pumps, hydrogen-fueled cars, underfloor insulation by robots, hydropower, electric vehicles, etc., etc. All on our website, and you can see these as many times as you want. In January 2021, we launched Marlo Solar Streets. The deal there was you got 12 panels, PV panels, photovoltaic electric panels, for £4,000 instead of £4,500, as long as we installed 10 installations in Marlow, and we did. We actually managed to get to 13, so 13 houses have got PV panels that didn't happen in 2020. This project is still continuing. As you know, prices are going up, and the price now for 10 panels is £4,810. The same scheme is still running. There's a table back there, one on the left in actual fact, which tells you all about it. If you have any interest in having a survey done, it's a free of charge survey and there's no obligation whatsoever. Please fill in your name and email address, and we'll get someone to come around and have a look at your house and see whether it's appropriate and how much it's going to cost. In January 2022, we launched our thermal imaging camera project to survey houses in Marlow and provide a report on areas where heat may be being lost. Again, leaflets and application forms for a free survey, we do this ourselves, is on the table on the right. Again, put your name and email address down, and we will do a survey for you. Unfortunately, not till November, because there's got to be that differential of temperatures between cold outside and warm inside. In addition, on both tables you will find a form to request our newsletter. That's relatively important because it'll keep you up to date with things like the meeting today and what happens after it. And there's an application form to join MEG, which is a whole, MEG is Marlow Energy Group, a whole one-off £10 payment. You could either join by filling in the form here or join on our website. As far as I know, we're trying to record this meeting so that people who haven't been able to get here, including councillors Zahir and Mohammed, Bucks councillor from Chiltern Villages just up the road, can hopefully see it later on. So, do we think climate change is a problem? Yeah, I think most people do. Do we have to stop burning fossil fuels, especially those that we get from Russia? The answer is probably a yes to that as well. The government announced yesterday plans for 67 new nuclear power stations. Who would like to have a nuclear power station in Marlow or Little Marlow? Anybody?
In 30 years'
time. When you're dead, maybe. Right. Other alternatives: wind turbines produce large amounts of electricity. But we would like half a dozen more in Marlow running across the top. I imagine there will be quite a lot of objections to that. There have also been plans to install a turbine in the Thames back in 2015, and that was thrown out because there were loads and loads of objections, especially people. So, if we want to generate clean electricity to power Little Marlow at Marlow, what can we do and where? So, before these lights all go out, over to Michael.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Beach. I work for RENA, and we're supporting the project on the technical side. We've been working now for about 6 weeks on this project. So just to give a bit of context to the study. So currently we're in a feasibility study stage. I should perhaps just explain that RENA is an engineering consultancy. Our office is based in Brighton, but I live just outside of Reading, so this is quite a handy project for me to come and visit. So the study itself is to consider the potential for a solar farm on the piece of land that's shown there in the images. So hopefully everybody knows where this piece of land is. I imagine that everyone's local and knows the site. The project has been funded by the Rural Community Energy Fund, which is it's a government-funded program. It's been running for about roughly 10 years and has provided grant money for RENA and Brighton Home Energy Services Cooperative. Kayla runs that organisation for us to provide the feasibility study to investigate the technical and non-technical aspects of a solar farm on this site. As you can see, we've come up with a preliminary design, which is shown in the drawings. The site itself is a total of around 8.5 hectares, but there are some restrictions on the site as far as not being able to use the entire area because of other things going on. So there's a proposed boat house in the southwest corner, which you can see there. We've got setbacks around the boundary, setbacks around the electricity pylon connections that run on the west side. There's access roads, there's needs for inverter stations and that sort of thing. So in total, the area for the PV panels, the solar panels, is around 7 hectares roughly. And what we aim to do is to understand the technical feasibility. So are there any constraints? What are the issues on the site with regards to access, flooding, the construction of the solar farm, the height of the frames which the solar panels are mounted on, the equipment within that site. So you've got inverters, potential battery storage area, grid connection, access roads, setback, screening. All of these things are part of a solar farm design. So as part of all that, we'll understand the cost of the project, the actual cost of the project, understand the net electricity that's generated from the site into the local grid. There are some options there. It's fortunate insofar as we have a very handy 33 kilovolt cable, which runs on the west side, which all being well, depending on our conversation with Scottish Southern Energy, we will hopefully be able to link the output from the solar panels into that last pylon. If not, the other option is to run the cable or run a cable from the site up to the substation, which is at the junction of the A4155, I think, and the A404, so north of the site by about a mile or so. And the third option, which isn't a standalone option, but it's an option of the same, is to essentially connect electricity into local business. but that's down the line to be looked at. Other aspects which people are perhaps interested in, obviously the planning side of it is potentially contentious. The site is outside of the AONB, but it's within the green belt. We know that the site has flooded in the past, and there are things that we can do to deal with that and mitigate potential flooding of the site. But in terms of the site itself, it's, as people may know, it's an infill gravel pit. That's what it once was. It's not currently being used for a great deal, as far as I know. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a pretty good site from the solar aspect. It's pretty level. It has an open southerly aspect, very little shading. Generally pretty good site. In terms of the capacity, the total output based on this design, and that could vary. It's around 4.2, 4.3 megawatts peak AC export capacity, which, given approximately 1,030 kilowatt hours per kilowatt of electricity, probably looking at supplying potentially around 1,350 homes on average, given average electricity consumption. 2,500 kilowatt hours per year for an average home, there or thereabouts. So it's reasonably significant. It's probably would be the largest renewable energy generator in the area if it went ahead like that. But I may be wrong again. So that's the sort of summary of the project. There are probably other things I can talk about. If you have any further questions, I've probably said enough for now.
Who owns the site?
So the site, if you want, would you like to talk about the site?
Yes, if that's okay. Yeah, Harvard Properties own the site, and Harvard Properties are very positive on this project. We have a representative from Harvard here today. I don't know if he wants to stand in at all. He doesn't have to.
It's me, just
Mr. Sloan. We do have another question which was asked on the internet before we got here, and that was from Dave Hampton, who said the A404 towers above the site and is going to cut the generation of electricity by 20 or 25%. Michael, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I did ask my colleague about this aspect, and based on the yield unshaded and the yield shaded, or with the potential shade, the loss would be between 1.5 and 2% per year if the A404 and the trees to the east were not present. So it's quite small.
I imagine that's because most of the power comes when the sun is, once the sun is already low, it's
Yes.
not doing much on that.
Yes, that's correct. And it's really only screening potentially the western side there. So
you're already set in along around that side, isn't it? Because of the access road.
yes, yeah, there's quite a considerable setback, as you say, the access road for the existing electricity supply down there anyway. So yeah, shouldn't be too much issue.
What is your mitigation for flooding, your proposed mitigation? Stilts?
Yes, essentially, we're going to be talking to the Environment Agency quite soon We know that the site floods and has flooded. I think we've seen a photo, I think it was 2014, there was quite bad flooding on the site, probably a lot of places here. So we know that the site can flood based on publicly available information. It's anywhere between, the maximum between 4 and 5 feet, actually, mentioned here, 1 to 1.5 meters. But it depends. I mean, the western side, there's more flooding, and the southeastern part is also that can also flood greater than the middle of the site. So to answer your question, we can set the PV panels up on raised mounting frames, and also the equipment within the site can also be raised so that we don't run into problems with flooding and electrics.
So how tall are you expecting the structures to be then? If you're setting them 2 meters off the ground, how big are the PV panels above that?
Well, we probably wouldn't set 2 meters above. As I say, we haven't determined what the flood, the maximum flood risk of the site is, like flood height of the site. I can't answer that question specifically, but I know that we don't like to go above 2.5 meters. I mean, normally we'd be nowhere near that height. I mean, typically the lower edge of the panel might be 1 meter or so, perhaps a bit higher off the ground. And depending on the angle of the panel and the size, and the pitch is going to be maybe 15, 16 degrees, depending on the orientation of the panels, whether they're in landscape or portrait, would determine the height of the back panel. But I mean, we wouldn't ever expect to be above 2.5 meters. But we haven't worked that out yet. We don't know the height of the
Technical advantage would be somewhat raised to get more reflection on the back panel.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so we're looking at quite high panels for this point.
Can I just add that although there has been historically donkey's years, the whole point of the Jubilee River, by the river bypass in Maidenhead, is to stop all this flooding. So hopefully there's going to be considerably less flooding in the future than there has been in the past.
The Jubilee River was in place in 2014.
Yeah, no,
The Jubilee River is downstream from it, so it has absolutely zero effect on anything upstream. That would be like saying that the Jubilee River has an effect on Oxford. It has a zero effect on Marlow.
I would say in 2014 the flooding on that land was about half a metre.
There was 3 foot on Marlow Rugby Club bottom pictures, and I've got pictures of that. Yeah. Which is just a little bit along past the rivers.
I'm not an expert on river technology, but isn't the fact that the weirs control the flow of the water, and therefore to open the weirs to let more water through, and therefore the Jubilee River takes that extra water? Isn't that right?
I think you're getting diverted, John, from what is
Anyway, another question that came on the internet was, with regard to this site, as it's in Greenbelt, if the solar farm went ahead in 25 years' time it was taken away, would that give the right of the landowner to actually build on the site?
Yes. So the flooding aspect, as I say,
Does the green belt designation get removed if this goes ahead? Does it stay as green belt if it's a temporary 25 years? Doesn't sound very temporary, but if after 25 years it gets removed, does it stay as green belt, or is it then a brownfield site to do with what was?
I don't know. I'd like to think the green belt wouldn't get removed. I don't know about that. I think that would be I mean, that's determined by the local planning authority, I imagine, but I can't be sure about that.
Most of Marlow built with floodplain.
Well, yeah, but look at the money that's been spent.
Yeah, gravel pit. Yeah. I don't know.
It's not a brownfield site, it's greenbelt.
Yeah, I
And it's
understand.
also in the designated country park.
That's right. Yes.
So to build on this land, you need very special circumstances.
Which we have. I
Well,
believe.
that's not determined by yourselves or anyone in this room.
Yeah,
It's
I'll
determined
talk
by
about that
the
in a minute.
strategic planning
Yeah,
committee.
yeah.
And whether a solar farm, I think everyone is fully supportive of the idea of introducing as more and more renewables. As with many projects around at the moment, it seems to be always a question of, is this the best place for it? If you drive down the M4 at the moment, you see numerous solar farms which are considerably bigger than this, and not in the green belt, they're in agricultural land, and it's a great way, as I understand it. If you put a solar farm in that land, if you take it from agricultural, then becomes a brownfield, and there are potentially advantages to landowners, because it then is easier to take it into other land uses.
I'm not sure about that, because from what I understand about planning, if the land can be farmed, it's unlikely to get planning permission.
So, but this land can be farmed.
This gravel site
It's
former
got horses
land.
on it
It's
today.
got horses on it, and it has had for the last many years.
Yeah.
The other areas of greenbelt adjacent to this have had cattle on them for many years, which are they are linked. They were linked to this space because they were the same former gravel pits. And Randall had, one of the local farmers, had cows on there for 20 plus years. His father did. So it's not a question of it's not farmable land. No, it's all farmable. The land further down the water meadows have had cows on them up until 18 months ago.
Good.
So, what happened to last time? Yes.
Sorry, yes.
Please speak. You said you were about to say something about special circumstances, and why you believe the project.
Well, when everyone's finished with the technical, I can talk about what role we're playing in this project.
Okay.
Can I just have something so that people are aware? We didn't just go to this site and say, oh, that looks absolutely marvellous. We started off with land owned by the Emmets and land owned by the Mash brothers on the north side of the Little Marlow Road. We found out very quickly it was AOND, and I think agricultural 4 from my distant memory, so we couldn't do that. We looked at the land on the south side of the road, found that an application had been put in a few years back and it refused. We looked at Wickham Air Park, because they've got a lot of grass on Wickham Air Park, and the bits of grass that was spare was evidently used by gliders and helicopters, so no chance there. We looked at land owned by Carrington, which is in the junction between the Wickham Road and the M40, that bit on the right there. And the Carringtons were slightly positive, but it didn't go anywhere. It's agricultural land, etc., etc. We looked at land owned by Harleyford down by the river towards Temple Lock. That was a no-no as well, because it's even more of a flooding risk than anywhere else. We've almost exhausted every possibility. This is the last chance to look. If the feasibility study comes back with a negative report, no way, then I can't think of anywhere else in Marlow, Little Marlow, where we could put some points farm, around Hooks Farm, again, Harleyford properties, and again, the same problem there. So we've done exhaustive searches, and this is the last one.
Just to add to your point about the AONP, because obviously it currently stops at the A4155, but an extension application is to do with natural England right now, which will include this river and
I think it was, if it was declared AONP, that would be the end of the project. Nick?
You said you're in the middle of the feasibility study, how far through it are you when you finished?
Okay.
Because you seem to be presenting quite a lot of provisional information, quite a lot already.
Yeah, so this is our first sort of go round at the design, really. Having done the site visit, having had a couple of internal meetings, considering the best suitable equipment and arrangement of panels, access to the site and setbacks, that sort of thing. So yeah, we're about halfway through, I suppose. The feasibility is due to end on the 31st of May. That's the report submission date to the Rural Community Energy Fund. So we've got about sort of 8.5 weeks, I suppose.
Is there any reason that you can see at this stage why you might come back with what John called a negative result? Because from a technical point of view, you sounded quite positive.
Yeah, there's no particular red flags that have come up so far, anyway. I mean, probably technically the biggest issue, I guess, would be probably the flooding aspect, which, I mean, there are ways to deal with that, but, it'd be nice if the site was not flood zone, but, there are ways of dealing with it, but the site certainly has advantages, and also disadvantages, but, it's a nice flat site, it's relatively open, it's not shaded too much, it has a potentially very convenient grid connection, which is handy. Sorry, sir.
Are you aware of a flood prevention scheme called Mute Ditch, which is just to the north of it?
Heard of it?
Yeah, very advanced. It has potential, that's a problem, but it's fairly advanced. So,
Yes, thank you. Yes.
The other thing is that on the day that the UN publishes this incredibly powerful report, I think the person who taught the cows and members is not where it should be, and this is urgent, these sorts of issues are very powerful. So,
So that's actually a good introduction.
Yes.
Just to ask just a couple of other technical questions. So the actual the founding of the supports for the panels, is that Parliament driven?
Typically, yes. Yes.
Okay, so and so they're basically supported on a series of piles, and there's a frame settlement.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Still.
And all
Still
the
frame.
cabling is done underground.
Pardon?
All the cabling is done underground.
Not all of it. Some of it is above ground, but a lot of it is below ground. Yes.
Does the feasibility study have any geotechnical exploration work, so understanding what is the ground film and what the toxicity or dangers or hazards are for disturbing it, or is that further down the line?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, no,
How
it's
much
a good,
of
it's a good
feasibility
question.
study?
We're not specifically looking at that level of detail within the feasibility study itself.
It would have to be done for planning, doesn't it?
Definitely, yes, definitely.
It's part of the environmental impact assessment.
Yeah, I should say actually that beyond this feasibility study, if it looked good from a sort of a technical and a planning and a financial perspective, then there's opportunity then to take the project beyond to the next phase, which is the stage 2 development stage, which means that a lot of these more detailed assessments would be done at that time.
So if the feasibility study gets granted, do you then sell the project to someone, or do you deliver the project, or
No.
I'm confused as to who's involved and who's going to benefit and who's going to pay for it. And
Sure.
Can I just hopefully answer that, and then we'll come back to Stephen about it. RC Rural Community Energy Fund offers 2 stages, Michael's just said. First one is up to £40,000 to conduct the feasibility study. We've got that, and that's all been sorted. Stage 2 is up to planning. So it investigates the whole site up to planning. You get a maximum of £100,000 for doing that, and at the end of that, you then make the decision of whether to go ahead or not, and if to go ahead, how to go ahead. Whether you issue shares in a community issue, shares to fund the thing, whether you do it in association with commercial companies because you can't raise all that money, whatever, combination of both maybe, but it's a 3-stage thing. Feasibility isn't possible, up to planning, yes, that presumably is okay, and then what do you do now? So does that answer your question?
yes, thank you.
Gentlemen.
You are quite rightly a bit anti having the panels too high above the ground, because if your cables are underground, you are significantly increasing your linkage length between the panels and your inverter. You've already got a very substantial loss between your inverter electrical input and your inverter electrical output. How much of that is it megawatt? I've only just seen it for the first time tonight. You've got a megawatt of loss. How much of that is in the cables, and how much of it is going to double if you have the cables double the length? Because your layout is not what I would call optimum for having symmetry, reducing the length of connection cable.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Yeah, we should actually pass on to Kate
Yes.
Yeah.
from Behesco, who hasn't said anything yet and is going to answer a lot of questions that you haven't answered.
Yeah, okay,
Thank you
so,
for your question, but if I may, we'll come back to it. So,
yeah.
Taylor and Taken, Brighton Energy Services.
Yeah, so, my background is in finance and economics, and I'm doing the economic feasibility of this project, looking at the various revenue streams that can be derived and community benefit. And so the reason why I wanted to talk so quickly after is because I'm also helping with the community engagement portion of this project, of this feasibility study. And so we decided from a very early stage that we would introduce the project to the community so there would be no surprises, because one of the biggest problems in getting the community behind an idea is that they're not told from the very beginning. And so Michael has been really gallant about getting these preliminary drawings ready with his team. But in fact, we haven't been working that long on the project, our first priority was to come and talk. So I do believe that there are quite a few technical issues still to work out. Isn't that right, Mike?
Yes,
Yeah.
still very early still.
We're still very early stages, and that's why I just wanted to say that. In terms of our experience in solar developments, we usually get about 13% of the total capacity lost through system losses. And I don't know what the eventual design is going to be. This is a preliminary design, but the most important intention of this meeting is to discuss the importance of this project, the importance of this project to the community, the importance of this project in the context of what's going on, not only with the energy crisis that we're currently experiencing, but the IPCC report that came out, where everyone need to prioritize and take direct action as much as we possibly can. And I personally believe, and you can hear from my accent, I'm not British. I've lived in this country almost 20 years, extremely devoted to the country. And I believe that Britain is a leader. It has traditionally been historically a leader in technology, in innovation. And I believe that this country can lead the way in demonstrating what can happen when we all get together and we make things happen like this in our community. I run an energy group in Brighton and Hove that is similar to what Marlow Energy Group is doing. And I believe that it is us in our respective communities working together to make our own local generation that we can benefit from, that we can control in part our own pricing, because there is an opportunity to do that here. And there's an opportunity to deliver significant community benefit from this plan. And so, for example, Michael was talking a little bit about battery storage. So when we look at the economic feasibility of the project, we're also going to study, because as you know, we can't all connect our electric vehicles, our heat pumps, everything to the grid. We can't immediately electrify our energy system. And there's problems because the grid hasn't been significantly invested in. And so using battery storage, we can use battery storage to help the grid manager, the DNO, the distribution network operator, to manage the peaks and troughs on that grid by storing or releasing electricity as needed in the community, which will allow them to connect more heat pumps or electric vehicle charging points in the city so that we can build our transport infrastructure the way that it has to happen. And so we have a big planning challenge. And one of the ways to overcome a planning challenge is to get the people behind the idea and get community support for a great idea. And I know that John and his team have worked very hard to identify this site. I think that because also the work that we do, we have worked with former landfill sites. So I think as part of this project, we probably should do some investigation into what will happen if we have to drill into the site, especially because there could be methane release. I don't know what the environmental impacts of the, so we will have to keep that into consideration when we look at the mounting systems that we choose for this site. And so also in terms of optimizing the revenue, we have the opportunity for using flexibility and working with the grid operator to get income when we sell it to them to contribute to the demand on the grid, or store it if there's excess demand from the solar farm, because otherwise it becomes constrained and you can't get it onto the grid. And so the other thing is that community energy groups, because they're social enterprises, they have access to higher export tariffs for the energy the electricity that is exported to the grid. There's a special alleviation for that. And so personally, Brighton Home Energy Services is working with Co-op Energy. It's a joint venture between Co-op Energy and Octopus, a company called Unity that buys community energy electricity, and they pay a really good price for the export tariff. And so we will pursue that as part of this project.
Speaking of that, with those same two partners, there's a wind farm by Ripple that's setting up to wheel electricity across the grid to households.
Absolutely. So Ripple Energy just launched their first wind turbine on that model.
I don't know if there's scope for other approach or, either to supply local households or to the council or whatever in the area.
Yeah, I mean, we can investigate that as part of the financial feasibility side of this project. So with the amount of generation that Mike thinks we can optimize about supplying enough electricity for 1,350 homes. I mean, that's a small part of the population of Marlow. It's only about 10%. But it's local energy where what we could also do is an arrangement called sleeving. And so you make an arrangement with an energy supplier for a local generation facility where you can arrange a discount on the electricity price through that energy supplier and then offer that to the community. But from what I understand from the price caps, when the October price cap comes through, we're going to be looking at electricity prices of about 28p per kilowatt hour.
We're already there.
Yeah. So it just makes a lot of economic sense to generate free electricity from the sun. The sun itself can generate 3 times our world's power requirement. I think we should be looking at more opportunities to use the natural rays of the sun. If we look at what happened in the UK from 2010, when the feed-in tariff was introduced, 2% of our electricity supply came from renewables, and then right now, 46% of our energy supply comes from renewables. And a couple of days last June, 100% of our electricity supply came from solar alone. So we have a really great opportunity, and I'm hoping that the community can come together to support a really important project like this one.
I have a question that comes immediately. In December, January, February, the average strong sunlight in each day is a little over 1 hour. The other 23 are quite important. Now, if you do your June, July calculation with 100% solar power, you're missing the point by about as much as you can miss it, because the time when you need the power is in the winter when you haven't got it from solar. And you have to take into account that nothing is free. Coal power was free, the coal was free in the ground. The cost comes and utilize it. Same with solar power. So the economics there are just eyewash.
Yeah, so let me say that Brighton Home Energy Services Cooperative has developed 58 community-owned projects, and we understand very well how the presentation of solar panels. So we understand very well how the curve works in terms of months and generation capacity. But I also wanted to say, what I didn't say is, there will be a pot of money that accumulates. This will be a community-owned project. So it's highly likely that what will happen is that shares will be offered. People in the community can buy shares and they'll get a return on their investment. And any excess profits that come over from the solar farm will be accumulated in the benefit fund. And this is done by, there's about 340 community energy groups across the country. And it's a model that they've proven to work in Bath, in Cornwall, in many parts of the country. And that community benefit fund will go towards helping organizations in the community, various charities, or whatever the Marlow Energy Group or whoever the shareholders are in this project decide is going to be the beneficiary of this fund.
Can I just answer your question or comment? Basically, it's a combination of many different things. PV is only one part of it. If the government actually supported tidal, which is there all the time,
You're preaching to the converter.
yeah, you've got wind, which is there hopefully most of the time, and you've got hydro, which works better in winter than it does in summer because there's better flow. So it's a combination of getting all these things together. And I thoroughly agree. I've got PV panels, and in December, January, February, there's hardly any power at all. Gentleman there, at last.
Sorry, okay. I'm confused on the economics. You know, Harleyford owns this bit of land, yeah? You guys have got some funding to do your research and set it up and get to planning. The only person that decides whether this goes on feasibility is that gentleman, the group that you represent. It's their land. They're the ones that can go, actually, we're going to, I don't know, build a bigger boathouse or put some more horses there. Now, Harleyford owning the land, you were talking about shareholders. So I imagine if you guys are doing this, and please don't take this the wrong way, it's a commercial activity. Harleyford is very expensive estate to run. You've got to generate cash.
Yeah, it's not owned by the estate, just to clarify.
Oh, right,
This is
sorry.
a separate entity.
Sorry.
We are currently running a feasibility study. We are interested in supporting the community. And we are fully supportive of the project that John put together. When it comes down to the feasibility study progressing, that's when we look at the next stage.
But surely the next stage is you guys would look and go, right, we can make X a year out of this. If you guys are going to put the capital, the capex in for the panels, for the battery storage, come back to that in a minute, and everything else, then you guys are going to want a return on your investment.
Just to confirm, we're not providing.
Right.
They're not the investor.
So who's the investor?
This is what
The
they're
community.
talking about shareholders.
But on your land.
No, yeah.
Yeah, but we pay a land rent. There would be a land rent to be paid for the rights to use that land to put the solar farm on it. And traditionally, it's about 800 to 1,000 pounds per acre.
Why wouldn't they just
Do it
run
themselves.
themselves and get all the money?
And then sell the electricity.
Because they're
Because
not
then they'll get
energy
a quick
managers.
return on their investment. Sorry, I'm not trying to, I'm trying to look at it as a commercial thing. There's lots of activities that go on.
It happens all over the country. There's
Okay.
people, I'm working on a farmer.
So
who-
£1,000 an acre a year.
800 to 1,000 pounds per
So
acre.
you get 10 grand
Yeah,
a year.
I think you're missing the point here, though. The point of this exercise is to conduct a feasibility study.
Yeah. Okay.
We are not.
No, I'm just trying to work out the end
I
result.
appreciate that, but we've got to understand is we're looking at a bigger project. We're looking about how we support the community, how we supply Marlow with energy. Everything that, sorry, I've forgotten the name.
Kayla,
Kayla has spoken about is we're fully supportive of. You know, the chats about things like rent and stuff for our property will come at a later stage once the feasibility study has been agreed or not.
I understand you wouldn't get 20,000 quid earnings as a farmer on a 20-acre field.
No, I understand.
It's very good money, actually.
that's why the farmers are
Yeah.
interested.
And they keep the land.
Yeah,
And it's there for 25 years maximum.
yeah.
I have a question about biodiversity. Does the, I think I mean, it's an incredible project, potentially. I'm unsure if it's the right location. That's my guessing on it. But does the feasibility study have any biodiversity research? You know, do you do any environmental impact assessments, or does the ecology play any part in the feasibility study, or is that just about the operational economic side of it? I've had no experience of feasibility study, so I'm just wondering what it includes, and or is that again something that happens further down the planning process?
It should have aspiration.
Yes, yes, I mean, it's certainly something that the feasibility study considers in terms of the opportunities for those things. But the study itself wouldn't include specific environmental studies as you described. So that would all come on the sort of, as John was saying, the sort of route towards planning. That would all be part of that stage
Because
of the
with
project.
the current planning laws, the net biodiversity gain has to be achieved on any development.
Yes.
And it's, there is an impact of this on that site for biodiversity. It's not neutral, and putting up some bird boxes and bat boxes will not mitigate the negative impacts that it will have. So I'm just wondering, yeah, at what point do you think, well, yes, the economics add up and everything seems great, but we can't achieve net biodiversity gain here, but we can pay for it to be offset somewhere else. Is that considered acceptable in a kind of holistic green view, or it's just something to consider?
Yes.
And I have, you know, the wildlife and the ecology and the biodiversity, especially in this area at this time when so much of it is at threat from projects that are, you know, 1,000 times worse than anything you could possibly come up with here. But it is another nibble away at it. So it's kind of, you know.
Also, Marlo, is it Save Our Green Spaces? I mean, they've been having, yeah, Save Our Green. They're guys who have been having meetings. I think there's one yesterday about the film studio, about Wickham Wanderers having a trade ground in Little Marlow. If they don't know about this, then I'm sure that's going to be the next one that's going to be added to their list. Oh, are you? Well, I'm just going to say that I would be surprised, bearing in mind it's right next to the river. It's a place of beauty.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier, would anybody want to have a power station or a windmill next to them? I mean, do people necessarily want, you know, as good as it is having solar farms, is it the right place? And is it going to be something that people will really object to? It may not be designated as AONP, but it actually is AONP.
But it will impact the AONP
And it will
on a
impact
visual,
everything there,
which again is breaching national planning law. So it will have an impact on the character of the area, on the green belt, on the local plan. You know, there's an awful lot of hoops to jump through.
And can I also just add one other thing? That is there was an attempt to put a battery storage unit in Cold Harbour, which the plans turned down because it's in the park.
About 4 months ago.
Yeah.
Can I just interject for a second? I'm a member of Marlow, and I've been a member of BPouts for about 25, 30 years, and I've got relatively good connections with Chiltern Conservation Board as well. I'm an extremely green person and a member of the Green Party. You need to know that, but I am. And rest assured, anything to do with biodiversity that comes through stage 1 or stage 2, I'm going to be on it, right?
And I will hold you to that.
I know that other community energy groups, they also have talked to RSPB, they partner with in Sussex Wildlife Trust. You know, there's a lot of activity to try and, because I'm totally with you on the biodiversity thing, it's awful. And I agree that we have to do whatever we can to preserve it.
And, you know, just prime example here, that field that's referred to as, what is it, gravel pit, landfill. There's barn owls forage on that every night a week because it's full of holes, because it's scruffy grasslands and it's perfect habitat for them. You put solar panels on it, there's no more voles, there's no more food, and wildflowers don't grow underneath shaded panels. And so, you know, there are so many good reasons to have this solar farm and have this facility for the town, but there's also the net biodiversity loss that it would have on that particular site. And so, you know, I'd feel a lot more comfortable if it was on the roof of all the buildings in Grove Park. That's going to be a lot more expensive. I'd feel a lot more comfortable if it was on a brownfield site. I'd feel a lot more comfortable if it wasn't in the country park. You know, but
Yes.
this is where it is because the other sites aren't as accessible or available. So I really get that. It's a real conflict.
Yeah, you have a question?
Yes, please. In your presentation, you talked a little bit about storage, but in the technical section, we were asking, what are you looking at in terms of megawatts and megawatt hours storage capacity and that?
Yes, so at the moment, we haven't really got into the detail of the storage. What we've got so far is based on our preliminary design, the capacity of the site, the solar, we've allocated a space for enough containers that will be suitable for that capacity. So it's like, here's a footprint of land which, if the storage option was reasonable, then this is the size of the land that you need for storage. So we haven't got into the detail yet of energy flows, what particular type of storage technology it could be, what the benefits, you know, what the reasons would be for having the storage, what, you know, why are we doing it? Is it for short-term peaking? Is it for, you know, longer term, for taking out the peaks and the troughs? We've not really got to that stage yet, but
How many minutes is long term? Because when you're talking batteries like that, you're talking minutes.
yeah.
Are you talking of having a really big battery, like a half hour?
To be determined, I think.
Because a half hour takes you into a new bidding spot on the rather ridiculous bidding for electricity supply we have in this country, where it takes 10 years to build a power station and 30 minutes to bid the auction of the power.
My understanding is that generally with battery systems, say you're looking at between 1 and 4 hours of storage.
Depends on the technology. Forgive me, Michael.
Sure.
But I know, if you're talking about lithium ion, it's shorter term, but on larger capacities, like we're talking about here, you might talk about vanadium flow where you have a longer period where you can store.
Can I just suggest we wait for the report to come out?
What's the timescale on that?
End of May. Because at that time, Michael and Kyla are going to come up with if there's battery storage or if there's not battery storage. Because for argument's sake, if we supply the whole of Joe Park, we may not need battery storage at all. But if we're not supplying Joe Park or not doing something similar, then we may need battery storage. Correct?
Yeah, it's all going to be part of the study, and as John says, hopefully we'll have all your answers. I hope so. Bye.
Nick?
Is it, how central to your plans are the community energy aspect? In other words, if at a certain stage there was a commercial offer from a energy industry company and that looked like making a difference between having projects or not, would you go with it, or is the community aspect well,
Yeah.
I think it has to be some sort of democratic decision somewhere along the line. I mean, there is a possibility that no money is raised for the eventual solar farm, that Harleyford Properties say, we're going to pay for the whole lot. If they said that, would we say, no, there shouldn't be a solar farm? We shouldn't export the electricity, we shouldn't export it to people's homes. You know, there are all these sort of decisions to be made along the line, and we don't know what the answers to any of them are yet. So it's a question
Their
of,
answer is that if Harleyford said we're prepared to put up the money, you wouldn't have a vote at all. They would just put up the money and they would do what the hell they like.
that's true.
Yeah. So forget the democracy. Democracy is just an illusion.
But if they did that, you know, full stop, would we then turn around and say, no, we don't want a solar farm, no, we don't want to
It wouldn't make
produce
any difference.
renewable
It
energy?
wouldn't make any difference. You could say what you like and they would go ahead and,
It's just a question
Yeah,
of
but
the
it-
use of democracy.
yeah.
It's not really a democratic decision, it's a commercial project. And I was just querying how sensible to your planning and thinking as the community, because, you know, a lot of people are into community energy, other people are into energy and don't particularly care how it comes. Whether it's a PLC or.
This is a community project, full stop.
Yeah, at this stage.
At the moment, Harleyford, as Jeff has just said, has said the land would be rented to us for a community project. That is the plan.
Yes.
I don't think we should underestimate what it takes to manage a solar farm. It's not the core business of Harleford industry to be an energy manager. And so I think that would play a fundamental role in the decision making, because they going to get the same land rent if they work with a community group that provides benefit to the community, and they can say that they've supported that and helped so many people out of fuel poverty, for example, in the community. Or they gave it to a big company who just took profits and paid their shareholders. I mean, there is a big difference. And I'd like to think that makes, that people consider that.
Just one technical point on the economics. So, presumably, I mean, the Marlow Energy Group has commissioned this analysis, and it would be copyright to Marlow Energy Group, and could not be used by someone else without permission or them buying the rights to it or whatever.
We're thinking what? Not 100% sure, but
I think the government as the funder owns the rights, but we've done, Michael and I alone have done what, 8 RSET projects? And they ask us to help promote and talk about all the benefits of the funding and what the government has done with that funding, but they've never, I don't think it's in their interest. The purpose of this fund is to fund community energy groups like Marlow Energy and help them get on their feet and get the project going and help the local community.
Any design for a solar field there can be done on an envelope in one evening and avoid all copyright problems because you just don't copy it. You just accept that some of the information is being worked out and you can do your own working out on it. You can do your own layout, you can improve on it, and you don't have a copyright problem.
okay, I think we should conclude in the not too distant future. Perhaps 1 or 2 more questions. Are there any more questions burning?
There's someone that's got a 3 kilowatts system on the house. I'm just waiting for British Gas to tell me when they're going to up my costs of electricity.
Oh, yeah.
But I also sign up for your feasibility of adding more panels in where I live. And solar is absolutely part of the answer.
Yeah.
It's not the whole, absolutely part of the answer.
And without doing a huge amount of advertising, solar panel thing at the back, please look at that.
Yeah.
But the thermal camera thing is probably more important, because that's the thing that tells people where they're losing heat through their houses. That's where we can say to people, that's what you want to insulate. That's what you want to cut your usage down, rather than get PV panels to produce more, despite the fact that you're wasting loads. So thermal camera, very important. Any more questions?
John?
With a matching wind generator.
Do you have any questions there?
In other words, what would be?
Could I ask a question?
And I know you would want to put the windmill down there in the valley, you would want that higher.
What?
But
I'll wait till people have stopped.
installation would replace that.
I haven't looked at that question. Sorry, I don't
All right.
know.
Can you just give me an idea of current ratings of wind power? One decent sized windmill, what are we talking about? 2 megawatts now?
Yeah,
Okay, so a couple of windmills equals that.
But then you have to know that the capacity factor.
This area is not close
No, I'm only just looking at that sort of environmental impact, and that's why I think it wouldn't want.
I think we can all Google what our wind turbine actually produces, and hopefully Michael will refer to that as well. We've got a question on the Zoom chat, evidently.
Get a trick question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've actually put it on the chat, but it was to do with the local, I think there's something called the energy generation bill or the energy distribution bill. And I seem to recall there was a speaker some months ago in the Marlow Energy Group who spoke to this, and that it had a bearing on the feasibility of local generation schemes. And I just wondered if that still is the case, or whether the legislation is being changed. There seems to be something going through Parliament at the moment called the Electricity Grid Review Bill, and just wondered if that had a bearing on the viability of the scheme.
I think he's probably talking about the local energy generation bill, which went before Parliament with a private members bill that didn't get taken, so it hasn't yet been passed, and possibly might not ever get passed. But it is a really important thing, because the major suppliers of electricity have got a monopoly. They supply, and you can't get it anywhere else. So if there was a local energy generation system where you could have a Marlow power company supplying electricity, that would make a huge difference. But at the moment it doesn't exist, am I right?
Was that your question, Richard?
Yes. So in relation to that, then, would with this scheme, if it were to go ahead, would it be that people would buy shares and then either get discounted electricity through an arrangement or a return on their investment?
That's part of what we're investigating in this study. That's part of what's going to come out as a conclusion
Right.
in the report.
Okay, thank you.
Right, if there's no more questions, can I thank you all for coming, much appreciated. Michael and Taylor for coming some considerable distance to talk to us. As I say, report coming out at the end of May. We will do newsletters, so if you want to sign up for our newsletter, no obligation whatsoever, you just get a newsletter then we'll update you on how things are going and what's happening. So please fill in the relevant form if you would like to know more about it later on. And I thank everyone for coming, much appreciated, hopefully you enjoyed it.